Hey, welcome to Wisdom Wednesday as we continue our series on becoming your badass self. And today we'll be going into our newest topic. Now, we've talked about releasing the handbrake so that we can move forward without fear. We've talked about tapping into the mother lode of good, knowing who our source is and how that works in our life. And today it'll be no different. We're going to tap into some things that are going to make us a little bit uncomfortable. That's okay. But for the beginning of this, I want to start off in a prayerful place. I want to bring our attention that the last couple of weeks have been really challenging, especially when it comes to emotions or to um, just allowing things to affect us. I mean, we've had the Afghanistan issue where we lost some soldiers and we lost Americans trying to get onto a plane, as well as I'm sure we've lost some people over there. So just any loss in general, but our soldiers, especially who are out there fighting for our freedom. On top of that, we have to hold in the high watch those people who are being affected by COVID. This week alone, I had a young lady who I used to work for me in another company, as well as used to come to my home to work as part time in my home business. And she passed away from COVID complications due to COVID and leaving her daughter behind. So we want to hold her and her family in the high watch and pray for her peaceful transition. I know another mother and daughter who older, but they both are in the hospital at exactly the same time battling COVID. And I pray for the consciousness of our nation and community. I'm a big advocate on everybody's entitled to their own opinion. I mean, that's what freedom is. We all make our own choices, but I think for me, one of the things and the challenges and the triggers that I have to work on is when I hear people putting other people down for their opinions. And especially in this time of whether to get the vaccine, don't get the vaccine, you know, we hear people and using derogatory terms toward people who get it, as well as people who don't get it, instead of being peaceful enough to say, hey, maybe we should listen to the people with their decisions and just weigh our own and we make our own decisions. But when I hear, I have this young lady who passes away from COVID, leaving her young daughter behind, and then someone else talking about how people who got the vaccine, I have to ask myself, where's our consciousness that we can't love each other and just accept our own decisions without insulting other people to make ourselves feel empowered? And I think today's talk is very much along the lines of that. So once again, let's hold in the high watch that family who just lost the mother in their family and her daughter and her family, that they find peace and joy in their heart, and that, the young lady has made a peaceful transition. We hold in the high watch the other mother and daughter, both who are mother elderly and daughter just a couple of, I think, 20 years younger than she is, both battling COVID right now in the hospital. Excuse me. And of course, anyone else going through these challenges. I mean, today alone, we had a strong wind and rain. I know another single mom who lost her car to the flood and had to be evacuated from her home. So there's a lot of challenges in the last couple of weeks, and this is where us sending our energy and affirmative prayer comes into play. So I don't want you to forget that even though we're not doing a full service, is that we take our time and remember all these things and the energy we can send out to the people. But most importantly is to pray for the consciousness of our world, that we remember that we're all individual spirits in this world, and we have free will, which allows us to make the choices that we feel are good for us. And for those of us who do the work, the intuitive nature of knowing what is good for us, no matter what anybody else wants to say, but that we can love, be empathetic, and be one in this oneness. So with that being said, let me break the ice a little bit and let me tell you a quick story. So one day the elderly priest called the eager, fresh-faced, wide-eyed, enthusiastic young priest into his office and said, "Son, I want to talk to you about some of the new ideas you've implemented around here. First, I want you to know I think it was a really great idea to replace the first few rows of hard wooden pews with plush theater seats. It worked. Now the front of the church is fills up first. Says second, the young priest then nodded with appreciation to the acknowledgement and was filled with just a bit of pride. So here's the young priest. He's got his chest out. He's like, wow, that was a great idea, and I've been acknowledged from it. And the old priest continued, you told me more upbeat music would bring young people back to the church, so I supported you when you brought in that rock and roll gospel choir. Once again, you were right. We packed up the balcony. Again, the young priest felt pretty filled with himself and said, thank you, Father. I'm pleased you are open to new ideas and better ways to do things. Well, to a point I am, said the elderly priest, but I'm afraid you've gone too far with the drive-through confessionals. But Father, protested the young priest, my confessions have nearly doubled since I began that. Says, I know, son, replied the old man, but the neon sign flashing toot and tell or go to hell just cannot stay on the top of the church roof. So again, sometimes we become very prideful in our own beliefs and what we can do that we forget to be empathetic to the situation. So today's title is Get Over Yourself Already. So that story talked perfectly because each time the young priest was given accolades, that chest pouted. He was, I'm great, I'm perfect. And then he got down when he told him about the neon sign. I had an old mentor who used to call it the fluff, fluff, slap. And basically it was her way of teaching the hard lesson. And she would build up the person, and then finally slap them back into reality, more or less. Now, it wasn't a physical one, but it was done in that manner to remember to be humble in everything we do. So again, our title today is Get Over Yourself. So what are we talking about here? Well, get over taking everything, including ourselves, so darn seriously. Getting over being resistant to change. Get over having such a narrow focus on life's possibilities. Get over being attached to how things are, being stuck in how they should be. And I think this is something we've talked about a lot, which is shooting on ourselves. You know, we grow in life with, oh, it should be this way, it's that way, and it affects everything. Our relationships, if it affects our performances, if it affects our schooling, our jobs, everything, because we have this fixed mentality on what it should be based on what we've been taught. And it's something we have to get over ourselves. Because if we truly want to be and live a badass life, we definitely need to get over that. I think today, I was reading a book today, and I'll leave the last word to your imagination. It is the subtle art of giving and just F and keep going from there. But the book went through a lot of different things, and one of the things that I agreed with was radical responsibility. And you've heard me say this. In fact, it was the first talk on this channel, which was radical self-responsibility, which was, again, spoken about by many Unity ministers. And it is very important to take that responsibility to get over ourselves, because a lot of times, until we can say who has the responsibility to help us grow, nothing ever works. So again, just to remind you, our series is based on the book by Jen Sincero, You Are a Badass, How to Stop Doubting Your Greatness and Start Living an Awesome Life. So again, just a quick reminder, and again, go back and watch the other videos if you haven't, is one, get over having such a narrow focus on life's possibilities. In other words, expand your focus. Today, we're going to focus more on that. We're going to get over being resistant to change. Another way to say it is to embrace change and to get over being attached to how things are and being stuck in how they should be. And another way to say it is to go with the flow. So let's talk about expanding your focus. So the first thing I want you to do is I'm going to be silent for about 30 seconds and do a little experiment with you guys. So if you're at home, you're in your car, doesn't matter, If you're listening to this on my podcast or watching it on YouTube, I want you to take the next 30 seconds and I want you to count how many red things you see in the room. So again, I'm going to go ahead and get silent and we're going to do 30 seconds. Okay, so now stop counting, eyes on the screen, or if you're listening, eyes on the road. Now, I want you to quickly tell me how many yellow things you saw in the room. See, the question here is that the exercise asked you to look for one thing, but could you have seen more things or paid attention to more things? So a lot of times, you didn't see much yellow because all you were focused on was the color red. So let's take a quote from the book. This comes from the book on page 137. And that's just an example of what we're noticing that we can see. There's also an infinite amount of emotions and thoughts and beliefs and interpretation and sounds and dreams and opportunities and smells and point of views and ways to feel good and respond and not respond and things to say and ways to help. Yet, because we are so set in our ways and committed to how things ought to be, what our reality should look like, we only scratch the very surface of all that's available to us every single moment. Meanwhile, we're totally surrounded by countless awesome versions of reality. They are all just hanging around like a bunch of shy teenage girls at the prom, leaning against the wall, waiting for us to ask them to dance. So why would you create anything that's not totally awesome? I like to equate that to the book as well as the movie of The Peaceful Warrior. And there's a scene where Socrates is talking to Dan and he's telling him, he walks over to the bridge, he pushes over the bridge, he yells, when he comes out, he's yelling at Socrates for doing this, and he goes, that was a lesson. He said, when you fell over the bridge, what were you thinking about? Were you thinking about your practice? He said, no. Were you thinking about anything else? No. He said, you were only thinking about what? Falling over the bridge. The one thing, the present moment of what was happening, you even had a name for it. And it was, because you were screaming on the way down. Okay? So it was that focus in that moment. And as they continued walking, he goes to Daniel. And of course, the movie had to make it more cinematic. And he's talking about the things going around. He goes, there's nothing else going around. And he puts his hand on his shoulder and life slows down. And when he does that, he gets to see the beauty of nature. He sees a couple kissing. He sees all these things that we walk past and act as it never existed. But because in that moment, we're in the present moment, we then get focused on what's happening and we can see all the beauty around us. Personal story, I always remember this, and I tell my mother that my mother was trying to get a mortgage for a house in New Jersey, and she hadn't heard anything, and she was worried that they had already, denied her the mortgage. And she had called me, so I had her on my mind. I was on my way to work in New Jersey, so I had that on my mind, and it was just so much going on. And I always remember the scene from The Peaceful War, and I took a breath, and in that moment said, there's never nothing going on. And I remember I turned the car off and I opened the door. And when I came out of the door, this little bunny was sitting right in the grass. And it just looked at me and didn't move, didn't run away as normal, almost as saying, hey, you're right. It's going to be a great day. And I remember that by that afternoon, my mother called me overjoyed. She got the mortgage. Everything was going well that day because of that. And I truly believe it was because I moved my focus back to the present moment. And I had to get over those preconceived notions of worry. Michael Bernard Beckwith says it best. He said, worry is nothing more than attracting into your life what you didn't want in the first place. So we talk about going with the flow. We talk about allowing. We talk about noticing and expanding our focus, when we take that need to be right and focus on that flow of life, that noticing everything going on. Next section we talked about today is embrace changing. Embrace change. There's a Chinese proverb that says, when the winds of change blow, some people build walls, other people build windmills. You know, in business personal development, we talk about setting the sail. When the wind blows, we can take the sails down and hope that the boat floats where it needs to go, or we could set our sails and use the wind to propel us to where we need to go. So when change happens, we're not trying to change the change. We just react to the change. And how we react is what makes the difference. Now, change is the only thing that we say that's constant in our life. You know, our master teacher, Jesus, in the Gospels tells us that we need to judge with right judgment. In Unity, our 12 Powers talks about judgment or wisdom, is knowing that when these changes come, that we have everything we need to empower us to move forward. So here's another quick story. New preacher had just begun his sermon. He was a little nervous, and about 10 minutes into his sermon, his mind went blank. After a brief second of the complete panic, he remembered that he had been taught in seminary about a situation like this. So here's a perfect example about a change situation, and it's something to happen, and reacts. He was told to repeat the last thing he had said with a bit more fervor, and he would help jog him into remembering what he was supposed to come next. He had just quoted Jesus' statement, "Behold, I come quickly." So he said it again, this time with a little more fervor, "Behold, I come quickly." Still his mind was blank. He tried again, even with more emphasis, "Behold, I come quickly," but still nothing. So he tried one more time. And this time he got all up into it. He said, "Behold, I come quickly," with such a force that he fell forward, knocking the pulpit to one side, tripping over the flower pot, falling into the lap of a little old lady in the front row, and the young preacher apologized profusely. "That's all right, young man," the little old lady said. "It was my fault. I should have gotten out of the way. You told me 3 times you were on your way." No, change doesn't always announce itself that way, but it definitely is something that works in life when change continues to come. So when we see this disruption, and I just want to take a quote here. It says, "I think we often view change as disruption, a break in the flow, a shift in direction, an alteration in our lives. But what if, just what if, change is not a disruption, but an eruption? What if change is life erupting into fuller bloom? Change is not a break in the flow, it is the flow. Change is not a shift in direction, it is the direction in which all life moves." So we look at change as different things. Now, I can tell you from example, you know, when I came out to Pennsylvania, I was working with one company. One afternoon, I was called into HR and I was told I was being laid off. For me, that change became life-altering because it felt like a weight was lifted off my shoulder. Now, for other people, they saw change as a disruption. People said, "Oh my God, what are you going to do now?" This and that. I know what it felt like for me. And then I fell into that trap because I began to see it as a disruption rather than an eruption of what is possible. And this was a position that I had that I brought from New York to New Jersey to Pennsylvania. Now, I can sit there and say, well, I could still be living in New York and this and that, but I'm grateful because that's what brought me out here to Unity, and I found the Unity out here, and it brought me to the place I am today. So there's definitely no regrets. So when the next thing happens to you, even with this job I'm with now, I remember being told I was being laid off. I shrugged and said, okay, I've been through this, things will work out. And now even the people around me were different and said, we'll work it out. My boss came to me and said, I don't want to let you go. Let's try to get you into something else. Finally, after twice that I've been told that I'm being laid off, the third time I took a slight demotion and I'm in a different department and I'm working that now. So even if something comes through, it erupts into something different. Now, in this position, I have seen some things that I know are pushing me in other directions, including this ministry, including, working on my own personal business, being able to talk to other people, share these experiences. So change isn't always about coming in to disrupt my life, but to come in to erupt my life, or to explode my inner being to being the true self I am, or the badass I'm trying to be. Finally, go with the flow. We talk about, I like to use the example of Charles Fillmore's prosperity, because a lot of times when we think about prosperity, we immediately think about money and material things. And we think that somewhere out in space, there's an ATM that's just going to start spitting out money, and that's how prosperity works. When in reality, it is a flow of ideas. It is a flow of visions that come to us, inspiration that hits us, that if we act upon it, takes us into that prosperous road. And that could be health, it could be love, it could be money, it could be anything. But until we enter that source, that flow, through either meditation, prayer, or just our general knowledge of expanding our vision, knowing that there is never nothing going on, we know where we're at. So going with the flow, although we don't always do that, we have to understand that. My wife, I love to, when she acknowledges something I say, because it not only affirms for me that I'm on the right track for myself, but that other people are hearing me. And somebody once told me, they said a lot of times when change comes, we start making excuses as to why change happens, and that it's not for us and it's against us. And this is that radical responsibility we're talking about. And one of the sayings I remember saying at church, and she admitted to me later that when somebody said, "Oh, that was good, I got to write that down," she goes, "Yeah, that was meant for me," was the one that said, don't let the need to be right stop you from becoming the person that you were meant to be. Excuses was something that was taught to me personally, when it says excuses are nothing more than the lies that stop you from being the best person you can be, or the lies that you tell yourself to stop you from being the best person you can be. When you allow that flow to happen, when you are trusting in unity, we talk about faith and the power of faith. In the Bible, we talk about that is not, the belief in something that's not seen. It is knowing that if we go through the flow, we do the work, and we trust in the process, that we will come out the other end shining that light that is ours to shine. A lot of times we are afraid, even in my units here in my ministerial, there were plenty of times I wanted to quit ministerial school. There were plenty of times I allowed the voices around me to tell me that I wasn't good enough. I had people that told me that my physicality or even my financials would stop me from being a minister. And I started to believe those things. But faith told me, keep moving, keep going. And I have. And I've been blessed over many times with different things and different people I can help, as well as finally being ordained as a unity minister and hoping that now I can take that work out to help other people. What in your life has been flowing in that situation, has been bringing changes, has been bringing things, and rather than hitting down or buckling down and saying, I got this, have you pushed away, made excuses, narrowed your vision to being, I've got to be right, and lost out on the beautiful opportunities? One last thing is, I remember when I was going down and I was being trained at the Boy Scouts to going to, and this was all the same summer, which was kept me busy, I guess. We were taking the canoe down the rapids in the Delaware. And of course, before you get in the canoe, you're talked to and you're told, if this happens, that happens. And I remember one of the things they told us is, if we hit the rapids and we fall out of the boat and I am disconnected from the boat where I can't reach and hold on to it, I'm wearing a life jacket. My job is to lay back, hold on to the life jacket, and keep my foot forward. because there will be rocks, there will be things and obstacles in my way that if I can hit with my foot as I come at it, I can push off and continue on till I can find the calm and get over to the shore. Life kind of happens the same way. When change is coming at you, if you're going head first, headstrong with, oh my God, I know what I'm doing, and change hits you and you're knocked out, you lost that journey, you lost that path that's taking you. But when you lay back into the flow and say, I know the work I've done, I know the knowledge, all I have to do is keep going, and you can kick off those changes and react to them like, okay, this may be teaching me something. This may just be telling me to go the other way. This may be whatever. But in the end, it's also about giving up. I remember that same summer I was going for my BSA lifeguard, and it's Boy Scouts of America lifeguard program. I had passed every part of it except the half mile. And the same day they were doing the half mile swim, they were doing the mile swim award. And I remember going to my teacher and saying, hey, I want to participate in the mile swim as well. And he's like, well, it's too late. You didn't sign up for it. And I said, okay. So I went with the flow. I got in the pool because we didn't do it in the lake. We did it in the pool in that place. And I had to do 44 laps in the pool for a mile or 22 laps for the lifeguard. Now remember, I had done 22, got to 21, got to the other end, came back, saw my teacher, and I said, look, I just did 22 laps. Can I please go for the mile swim? So again, asking in faith, ask you shall receive. You've heard it. He looked at me, he said, go for it. And I could tell you by the 33rd, 34th lap, I was cramping. By the 40th lap, I was hurting. But 44 laps later, I earned the mile swim. And that's the point here. It's about, you want to be a badass in life, you want to be a spiritual badass, whatever it is, you have the potential to be the best you can be, not only for yourself, or the people around you. So it's not about quitting. Somebody once asked me, what's your IQ level? I said, I don't know. I've never taken an IQ test. He goes, no, what is your I quit level? What is it going to take you to quit? Think about that. How easily have you quit because your IQ level is so low? So I implore you today, open your focus, expand your horizon to everything around you. There is so much going on, and it could be just a subtle hint. It could be a loud explosion that says, hey, I'm over here. Look what you can do. Embrace change, because it's always going to come. It's the one constant in life. There's no way to stop life from changing. Things happen. But embrace it. We grow. Eric Butterworth is famous for saying that. He goes, we don't just go through things. We need to grow through things. And finally, go with the flow. Life is so much more badass when we do. It's exciting when we go along with it and see the challenges and rise to the occasion. But most important, as I always say, we learn these things so that the people around us can have permission to do the same and be the badass self they are. So once again, I thank you for the third installment. I can't wait to see you next week for the last installment of being your badass self. I hope you've gotten something from today. I hope you go out and practice this all week. I hope you also joined us on our Monday meditation. Again, this is on YouTube. It is on our podcast. You can catch it either way. Again, let's hold a high watch for all those people in the world today who are going through some challenges, are going through some doubts in their life. They're going through some medical or health issues, people who have transitioned. Let's keep them all in the high watch and know that in this oneness, we are one with our brothers and sisters. And together in an energy, we can comfort each other and we can empower each other. So with that, as always, if no one else has told you, I love you and there's nothing you can do about it, make sure you subscribe and hit the little bell on YouTube so that you know when the next episode comes up. As well as if you're on a podcast, make sure you subscribe to the podcast so that you'll be notified the next time a episode comes up. So again, I bid you namaste, and I thank you for being here.